We've been talking about how to feel supported by your partner, but how do we take it to that next level and actually co-parent in a way where we actually show up as a unified front?
We'll let you know how we figured it out.
Mama Says Namaste. Mama Says Namaste.
Making a family can be easy and fun.
Oh yeah, but raising a family can be a whole different story.
From spouses to kids to the crazy daily grind, life often directs us away from connection and more into reactive chaos.
If you're tired of that cycle and are seeking something beyond the picket fence blues, this is the show for you.
I'm Ashley.
And I'm Nathan.
And we're here to take you from chaos to clarity by bringing awareness and intention into your home, not waiting for one day, and highlighting how the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us.
Take a deep breath in and let's start a brand new day. With Mama Says Namaste.
Last week, we dove into the first stage of our listener question. And so we'd gotten a question in from Willow, and she'd asked about how do we support one another as partners, and then how do we co-parent together where we come across as a unified front. And so last week, we really dug into that first section of that question. How do we support each other as partners? And we addressed it from kind of a mind, body, soul approach. And that really is, first and foremost, the first step for successful co-parenting.
Right. It's amazing how often we go into parenting without really communicating what we're doing.
Right. And so if you're talking about the person that you are choosing to parent your children with, and this is, we have a whole other podcast for navigating relationships where you have separated or divorced parents and how you're doing that. And that's we're saving that in some ways for another episode. And so this is where you are choosing to actively parent together. And I say that we're saving those for another episode. This is also for the relationships where maybe you are separated, but you're choosing to parent in a way that works, and you have a healthy relationship to do that. So how do we do that? Number one is looking at the mind-body-soul connection. Clearly, if you are in a separation or divorce scenario here, that's going to look a little bit different than the intimacy that we described from last week's episode. These next two steps, though, are relevant for everyone, regardless of whether you are in a very intimate relationship with that person moving forward. And so the two main keys that we have beyond fostering the relationship between the two of you so that you two feel supported and encouraged, whether that's through intimacy or whether that's through just choosing to be on the same team for your children's sake.
Yeah, and I mean, that's really vital for your children because they are, well, my observation with our children anyway, I won't speak for all children, but our children are kind of like those raptors in Jurassic Park. They're always looking for the weak points in the fence, not in like a negative, like angry way. It's just like curiosity. It's like, where's the edge? Where can I get away with, where can I express the screaming, or where can I do that? And sometimes as parents, we can fall into this game almost of, well, one is the rule maker and one is the rule breaker, and that can be really frustrating.
Right, and then you have kids playing each other and
playing
the parents against each other. And so then they know, I'm going to ask mommy for the sweets because she's the pushover. And there's elements of that in every family because obviously I'm the biggest pushover in our family, hands down. Right.
No, I'm the hammer. But I say no before they even start asking if I see a question mark anywhere near the end. No. But no, being on that same page, having some level of consistency is really, really important. Like avoiding playing that game, I think.
So the first
is a valuable asset in that relationship piece. Like you've got to be really tight together, and you have to be aware of when you're getting played a little bit, I think.
Right. So our number one rule for this is when we're now, we've looked at each other. Now we're looking together at our children. What are we going to do? We have two main policies that we abide by. Number one is we make decisions together. That means that we do not allow getting played by each other. So my response, oftentimes if I have a kid that comes up to me and asks, can I do this or that or something, my first question is going to be, well, have you talked to daddy about it? Not I can't make a decision until Daddy or anything. I just want to know, are you going to be clear with me on whether this conversation has already been had with another parent? Or, because she knows, because we have all girls, our kids know, our girls know that we're going to talk with each other. Right. And so we have a few rules with this. So if we're making a decision together, the things are this. Number one, and I love this tip. This was from Nellie Harden, who was a recent guest on the podcast. We talked about raising teenagers, and she said a policy in her house is that her kids know that they do not ask a permission question, a can I question, or something like that in public. An example of this would be like you are with a group of people and the two kids come running up to you in front of everybody and go, "Can Susie spend the night tonight?" The answer is going to be an automatic no. Why? Because it's an uncomfortable situation. We don't get to really dig into the conversation with our kid. So we choose to just say, we're not making a decision on this right now. We need to discuss this.
I love that because it creates a demand for some kind of creativity, which is going to make you smile. Because if you shut that door and say, hey, this door is closed off right now. You can certainly ask me. We can have that discussion. Well, then suddenly they start to think, okay, how can I get Mom or Dad to the side so that we can talk about what I really want to do? Mm-hmm. And then we can discuss the pros and cons that maybe I haven't thought about.
Right.
That's the environment that you're wanting to create rather than this. And I love that idea because I always loathed being asked in public of, can we do, there are a lot of layers here, and I wish that you could see that as a 3-year-old. But
exactly.
All you want is just cake and a good time.
Right.
And so, it's...
So our kids know 2 things. Don't ask us a question in public like that. You're not going to get it. You're not going to get the answer you want. It's either going to be a no or it's going to be a hold on, because we need to have this conversation in private, not in public. And then the second one is that we're going to be speaking with each other on it. So they know that if it's anything that's more weighted than, something super minor like what color shirt should I wear today, I'm going to say, well, have you talked with your daddy about it? Yes or no? Okay, well, what did he say? That's my first option. And then, okay, well, he said that. Well, what do you think I'm going to say? And then if I disagree, I can have a conversation with Nathan later about it. So I'm going to say that. Or it's, did you have a conversation with your dad? No. Okay, well, I'm going to before I give you an answer. So we don't. Our kids don't ask us those sorts of questions in a public setting where it's going to be an uncomfortable situation at all. And they also know that we're going to discuss it between the two of us before we come back with it.
And I think that's the important point here, is to navigate where do those uncomfortable, difficult situations come up, or where have they come up in the past, and how can you structure something to avoid those so it's more streamlined.
Right, and
that's all this is. Was we didn't like that, and we said, hey, here's the new standard of excellence.
Exactly.
You want something done? This is the path to getting it done. You want a dead end? Screech right into it, baby. I mean, it's going to stay that way.
And both of these policies were laid out, specifically because of us coming up against this, because of us being asked a question or us being played by one another.
Yeah,
and so
Ashley will get asked the difficult question and then look to me. I'm going to punt. Honey, what do you think? I'm open, I suppose.
But put the pressure on you.
But you're gonna know. Would you say no for me?
All right. So let me take this a step deeper in this too. Is with this and with us making decisions, that also means that there are many times where Nathan and I choose to remove ourselves from our children. We say, we need to have a discussion about this in private. And we make a decision in private, not in front of them, so we can weigh out the pros and cons and navigate that.
Part of that is you don't want the children to see, some degree,
what the weak link is, right?
Your angles, where you're like, oh yeah, I totally see this, but this. They're going,
right.
Okay, now next time I'm going to try this, and this.
Exactly.
And so it is important to have some shroud of mystery in how you make those decisions. But it leaves room for both of you to express, like, hey, I don't think it's a big deal. It offers that freedom to have those true conversations that you would not normally have in front of the child.
Right. Exactly. So our next deeper level of that is that we make decisions together, and if those decisions are not something that we can easily make together, we're going to make sure we have opportunity to discuss it in private, and if we cannot come to an agreement, we're going to sleep on it. We're going to both make sure that we have given our emotions some time to settle so that we can make a an agreement together. Because what we're looking at is what's going to work the best for our whole family, and it's not just it's not Nathan and me against each other. We recognize we're on the team, so in order for the whole team to move forward, we've got to figure out some compromise or some way to make a decision on this.
And every couple rubs into this as you're learning how to parent. Is this comes up? Is wait, you said what?
Right.
And well, I said, yada yada. So now. And so the more you can avoid that, the more you can be on that same page.
Right.
The more valuable it is because the kids are getting the same consistent message.
Right. So once you've already worked on being valued and supported by each other, which is what we worked on last week, now we're saying, okay, I'm valued and supported, and now I know that our parenting is a mutual thing, and that we are clearly communicating and we are on the same page. So that's the first thing. Now, the second aspect of this is where the grace part comes in, and I think it is so critical for parents. I actually did a blog post a long time ago. I'm going to see if I can link to it in the blog notes for this one. That was called "Daddies Are Not Babysitters." Because I again, lesson learned the hard way. I mean, these are so many of the times and the things that we share in here are our own personal experiences and lessons we've learned along the way. There are so many new mamas, myself included, who knew the whole routine, knew exactly what the sleep schedules are and the burp schedules and the feeding schedules and when we play and exactly how we play and how they're supposed to lay down and what they're supposed to do. And while I recognize it's important to have some schedules and routines for different times, kids really need that. And it's important to be a united front for us to come together with our kids. And so that means that if there's something that is really, really strict on the schedule or a specific quirk that this child just really needs or something, we're coming together as a team on that.
Yeah, these are on daily decision-making things.
Right. But
interpersonal relationships.
There you go. That's a different ballgame. Interpersonal relationships are when that said mom is really frustrated because the dad is maybe playing in a more, rough and tumble way with the child than what she as an individual is doing.
From your own experience.
Maybe just a little bit. Yeah, like an example of me being frustrated because Nathan would get the kids all riled up and be wild and crazy with them. And I felt like evening time needed to be a calm down time.
But I can also take them to the highest highs and bring them down to the lowest lows.
Well, that was where I learned that I had a few different approaches. I could come in and throw my agenda on exactly how Nathan needed to parent our children. And in essence, trying to make him a second mom versus a first dad.
Second hand.
Yeah, a second-hand mom versus a first dad. I can come in with my agenda and tell him this is how you put the kids to bed at night. And he follows that. I could sit outside the door and just have all kinds of resentment and anger that he is messing it all up. Or I could get the heck out of the way and let the other parent, who is just as much a part of of bringing this child into the world,
deal with the mess.
Yeah, deal with the mess. And if he wants,
himself.
And if he wants to have that relationship with the kids, he follows through with it all the way. And that's what we did. And we both learned lessons on that.
Oh,
you pulled back on some of the crazy right before bedtime, but I also, I learned if it ticked me off, sometimes it was better for me to just remove myself entirely. I trusted you with our children. I knew you loved our children. I knew your desire was the same as mine. It was in their best interest. Your approach was very different than mine, and it drove me crazy at times. But me moving out of the way and giving him the space to do that created a relationship with you and your girls that you have a beautiful relationship with them, and it's a different relationship than mine.
Yep.
And I'm so grateful for that. And sometimes we sabotage the efforts for individual relationships because one parent has an agenda for how to parent. And the reality is there are a gazillion ways of parenting. And really, it's individual relationships. That's what we're talking about. And my individual relationship with anybody else in this world, Nathan or any of our girls or beyond, is my individual relationship. And that's the same for you.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes we can forget how important those different relationships are. You know, those different connection points, and you know, you having the willingness to back off of your anger and not shame me for what I was doing, especially in front of the girls, where they think now that type of play is not allowed or appropriate. You know, it can be a spiral where, you know, if I was a more passive husband, I'd say, oh, okay, yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
And I don't ever express that part of it. And the kids know that now I follow Mama's rules now. I don't have my own rules. And so,
right. Well, yeah, it kind of negates your role and your say in the house, for sure.
Until Mama's out of control, and then she brings Daddy in to lay the smack down. And so you see there's these really strange balances that we give our children unintentionally.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is done through the act of play, because the act of play is how they can find some of those boundaries. You know, I help them find their physical boundaries. You help them find their emotional boundaries. And between,
I think there's a lot of that goes on, for sure. Yeah. You're right.
Jules totally bailed out on a bike while we went on a cruise today.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, it's one of those things that is an important value for them as a whole. And
I love that you even pointed out the physical versus the emotional boundaries, because I think you're right. They tend to come to me for one of those. They tend to come to you for the other. And the physical boundaries, it could frustrate me and everything on one hand. But then on the flip side, I look at it now and I see that you have, you know, 2 teenagers and 1 tween who has no issue roughhousing with you, wrestling with you, and knows what positive non-sexual touch is. It's not a weird or uncomfortable relationship because they now have developed into young women. They've learned positive non-sexual touch so much through the roughhousing and, you know, silly play that you guys do that's way more rough and aggressive than what I do with them. And that's okay. I'm thrilled that they have that, and I'm thrilled that they have a different experience with you than they do with me. That's so much richer for them and for us.
Yeah.
And gives us good conversation to come back to as well.
That's right. That's right. Well, I think the diversity is an important aspect of it. You know, it's important to be on the same page in your intentions, kind of like with your purpose, but your process can be individualized, if that makes sense.
Right. So again, our tips for you for successful co-parenting is, number 1, looking at how you are supporting each other as individuals before kids are ever brought into the mix. And that's all of last week's podcast on mind, body, and soul. That's our first tip. And then that second one for today's episode is making your decisions together. Remember, if you cannot make a decision together in the moment, make sure A, it's not being asked in public, B, you have some time alone to talk about it, and C, you can sleep on it. And then the third one then is allowing space for the individual relationships. Dads aren't babysitters. Your family is not just helping mom.
Yeah, your moms aren't the only parent.
Yeah, you have a whole family team, and every one-to-one relationship in that family is an individual experience. And so allow the space for that to grow and to develop, and you're going to have more rich relationships out of it. And of course, that ultimately brings us to that wonderful tagline that creates that synergy in our home. When we celebrate how the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us. Namaste.
1, 2, 3. Up with the rising sun, already on the run. Mama says namaste. Life is a tangled mess, and you don't have to stress. Mama says namaste. 'Cause today I will stand up and be